that we paid them that sum of money to suppress our opponents. It was a bribe. They know differently. And so this is why, in opposition, we made a commitment that we shall restore the 1 month tax-free bonus. And we have done that faithfully since we got into office. We kept our promise to the disciplined forces of the country. Today, that 1 month tax-free bonus costs $1.3 billion. That is what the disciplined forces get now that they would not have gotten had APNU been in power. So clearly, for those of them who are voting tomorrow, they need to, I urge them to support a party that looks out for their welfare and that has kept its promise to them. Didn't see them as bribe takers for suppressing their opponents. It's interesting that the APNU just had a press conference that they concluded, and not a word was mentioned about the disciplined forces, which they knew will be voting tomorrow. It's either they don't care, they didn't know about it happening, but I guess that couldn't be the answer because they are also preparing for the vote. But they had nothing to say to the joint services, the disciplined forces. We've also witnessed from the just concluded press conference, which I'll come to in greater detail, another crazy, unsubstantiated statement from the leader of the opposition. The leader of the opposition said that should they have been in power, he would have given $1 million Guyanese to every household in the country. Now, we've recalled that they took away the $10,000. They couldn't keep the $10,000 for their children because they said we couldn't afford it. But he would have given $1 million to every household. So that's about 5,000 US dollars. And if you work out what that means, it's about 1.7 billion US dollars per year. In the 2 years that we are going to use oil and gas money, last year was the first year, we only transfer from the Natural Resources Fund 600 million, just over 600 million. And this year, it's just over $1 billion. So all the funds that are available from last year and this year, after being accumulated for several years, that we are transferred to the budget, much of which we have not utilized as yet, would not have been adequate to even keep that promise for a single year. It is this sort of economics. I don't know if you could call it economics, but it's a sort of rambling. that leads people not at this than Norton, but they're also vying for leadership in that party. So many of the issues still remain unsettled. Since we're approaching local government elections, and as I said before, this is a PPP press conference, it's important that in this contest of ideas across the country, in the local government elections and the campaigning, that we look at what people critically examine, what we say, what we propose to change the lives of citizens, and what the opposition is proposing. So we saw in Georgetown a document that they're utilizing, and I'll get it, but the document speaks about the PPP track record. Now, we'll come back to that in greater detail. I think I may have left it on my desk because I really wanted to go through it with you to examine that. But in Linden, after much concern, this is the one that they came up with. After having examined carefully, and this is a case of plagiarizing. Now, if Solomon and Vanessa Kisuna, I gather they're educators, if they submit in an exam something like this, they'll get 0 mark. In fact, they may get some lashes for plagiarizing. This is exactly the PPP flyer that we're circulating, and they just changed the narrative. Can you get Steve to get the other one for me, the Georgetown one? So this is in Linden, plagiarization. So we have a flyer, and you can go online and you can see it, and it came out very early, and we've been distributing it. And on the last couple of days, I see that they have done this, plagiarized almost everything, and then gone off into a number of extraneous things. Lobby for the reinstatement of the Guyana Association of Mayors. Now, how would I help the residents of Linden? Foster stronger ties with the RDC. Now, they control the RDC, and they control the municipality, and they will foster greater and stronger ties with the RDC. And the RDC is the head of the RDC is the one who is practically leading their campaign for the municipality in the area. A lot of nonsense. Pursue the assessment of all existing and new properties to enhance the tax revenue base. Now, they are the ones who are telling people that we will increase taxes if the PPP were to win the elections. They now plan to increase taxes in Linden. This is based on their own flyer. This is an addition that we don't have in our flyer because we don't intend to raise taxes in any of the local government areas, and that is clear as daylight. But they have now put in their flyer for Linden that they will increase taxes for Linden. And they did this. They increased the taxes in New Amsterdam. In the period they were in office by nearly 100%. You would recall that Vulcan signed a contract with a Canadian group for over $320 million to do an assessment of properties around the country. And that was clear that once the assessment was done, this was done in 2018, I think. Once the assessment was done, then they would have increased the taxes. So clearly, APNU, one of the lies they've been telling people is that the PPP, if the PPP wins, the PPP will increase taxes throughout the country and in all these municipalities. In fact, it was the PPP that campaigned in 2018 on no new taxes because people were already overburdened with APNU taxes, and we had to fight off. If you look at the records in Parliament, you would see we had to fight Vulcan on the issue of property tax assessments. I don't know what happened with that report, where they signed a contract for over $320 million to do exactly this, to assess properties throughout the country with the Canadian group. But like everything else on the APNU, this may have disappeared too. They're circulating another flyer. This one is on the oil and gas sector. This is the oil and gas industry. And so this flyer says, compare and contrast, tens of billions in hand. That is that the PPP has this. Not this one, the one that APNU is circulating in Georgetown. So this is compare and contrast, and how they would have used the money. Now, when you look at the same thing, we will raise living standards for all. This is what they're campaigning on now. It's so silly, including single-parent family, pensioners, indigenous peoples, etc. Generalization, how they will spend billions of dollars. Now, we know their track record. On indigenous people, they practically took away the presidential grant, reduced it. They fired nearly 2,000 people. We know that the cost of living went up. They took away how they treated the pensioners, took away their free water. So I'm going to give you Norton a figure because they like to talk about how many people are served. So the Because We Care grant, over 200,000 kids will get it. That they will get $8.6 billion starting this week. The pensioners, we have 73,000 pensioners. From 2020 to now, their pension has been increased to a total amount of $14.7 billion. They're getting more. $14.7 billion more they're getting from 2020. Those who are receiving public assistance are getting, they're getting $4.1 billion more from 2020 to now, and they're 29,000. If you add the 200,000 kids and the 73,000 pensioners and the 29,000 public assistance, that's 302,000 persons who are getting nearly $30 billion more since the APNU left office. Over 300,000 people are getting that. These are real people, real children, real pensioners, those are getting public assistance. There are about 17,000 people now, additional to that have found some form of employment directly with the government through the part-time job, the CSO program, or the CRIP program. About 17,000 people who are now getting an income from the government, in addition to the 302,000 persons who are becoming a beneficiary to this issue. So this is how the money is going back to ordinary people. And so when they say, oh, they're going to spend more on oil money, they're going to spend more on oil money, this is, yes, bring it quick. So that is how people are benefiting from it. These are real people. I don't need to talk in the abstract. I can tell you about real people getting more benefits from since the PPP has gotten into office. I'm leaving out the thousands more who have gotten house lots. I'm leaving out all the cash grants that have been paid to fishermen. I'm leaving out the assistance to the farmers for fertilizer and other things. I'm leaving out the removal of taxes. So we are quite clear about our issue. They still got the wrong flyer. I have to go in my phone to get it. Because this is the one being circulated in Georgetown, and that is why it's important that we get it. So this is the one that they're circulating in Georgetown that I was looking for. So they said, a vote for the PPP, this is being circulated. The PPP cannot be trusted, first of all. That's what they're saying in the city. Having failed the country, trying to rig elections, doing all of this. If anybody is untrustworthy, it is the APNU, AFC. So line number one. Line number two, PPP interested in getting waterfront properties. I dealt with that already. There are no waterfront properties in the city, except in a tiny few that APNU, through one of their councillors, has been trying to sell. And if we look at their track record of selling out waterfront properties, just look at Jordan, what he did in Linden. The entire waterfront was given over to the PNC bigwigs. So that's in their flyer. And their waterfront properties and lands for elite, friends, and family, and favorites. That's exactly what happened under the PNC. So we disprove that. A vote for the PPP is a vote for high rates and taxes that will push poor people out of Georgetown. We've dealt with that already. It was APNU that's looking to raise the rates, that there will be no rate increase in Georgetown. Ruthless demolition of poor people's property. So I don't know where in Georgetown we'd ruthlessly demolish people's property. We've been in office for 20-something years already. Destruction of vendors' livelihood, constant flooding of Georgetown, if we're in office. And if you vote for APNU, you vote for a clean city, less restriction on GT residents, lower property taxes. So they plan to decrease property taxes, but that's a lie again, and minimal flooding. And a group of councillors who know and care for the city. This is the nonsense. If you look at our flyer, it's clear. We said we will not only focus on roads, drainage, garbage collection, lighting in the city, the playgrounds, a whole range of other things. But we'd also move to make the council accountable. We'd live stream the council meetings. We will move to institutionalize in the city council a system where you can pay your rates and taxes online. Very little interface with having to go in there. Things like building permits and all of that would be, your applications could be done online. This is the contrasting flyer that they're circulating. And it tells you a lot about a political party. So this, and then the fourth one is a clean voters list. These are the flyers that we hear saying about. So Linden is a little bit more sophisticated, but wholesale plagiarism. Then the oil and gas, spreading a lot of lies about how much money we have and what they will do with the money, but we've seen already they don't have a clue about how to spend the resources, and I've already demonstrated that thousands of people, over 300,000 Guyanese, are beneficiaries of higher earning employment opportunities or assistance from the government, largely because of us. And we haven't spent a large amount of oil money as yet, but because of of the philosophy of the government. So this clean voters list is the fourth flyer that they're circulating, nonsensical flyer. And we saw the Chief Justice dealing with this. So there is a challenge to the voters list by the APNU. And I want to quote from what the Chief Justice said. She said, "It does appear that relying on unsubstantiated and inadmissible evidence, the applicant, that's the PNC, APNU, is inviting this court by a side wind to impugn the OLE, that's the official list of electors that was utilized for the 2020 national and regional elections. The invitation is unequivocally rejected," the Chief Justice said as she handed down the ruling today in court. The Chief Justice also said there's nothing in the evidence to support the claim that the OLE is heavily flawed. She said instead, the applicant has provided unsubstantiated claims. So this is, as it relates to this flyer, which they have been pursuing for the last several months now, that they've been circulating among people quietly that they need a clean list, the elections would be rigged. The second issue is the demarcation of the boundaries. They went to court on a second matter, and that too was rejected by the court to claim that it was done illegally and that the demarcation will confer an advantage on the People's Progressive Party, that we will get an advantage over them. And I think that, and so too, the courts again dismissed that. The Chief Justice ruled that the boundaries were properly demarcated in accordance with the Constitution and the laws of our country by the rightful person. She rejected our attempt and the AG's attempt to join the case because what she said clearly that she was not. And our intention of joining the case, because as the Chief Justice rightly pointed out, it was a question of law. And so GCOM had to be the respondent. But we wanted, since they claimed in their affidavit that the PPP would have been getting an unfair advantage because of the demarcation, we didn't want that to go unanswered because GCOM could not answer that for us. They dealt with the legality of the decision. So we were hoping by joining the case to point out that no such thing would have happened, because all that was done in the demarcation is going back to status quo ante. We were reversing, or GCOM had reversed in most cases what North Vulcan did in 2018. And so it was not like creating in all these cases new NDCs, which is what they did, like in the Pomeroon with just a few hundred people, they created a new NDC because they knew that this was a pocket of support. So GCOM, Vulcan, and Lowenfield did that. Most of it was a reversal, so it did not confer undue advantage to either party. So, but since the Chief Justice, I believe, rejected us because she made it clear she was not going to deal with that argument about advantage or disadvantage to the parties. She was only going to deal with the question of the legality of the decision on demarcation. So we accepted that because this is what we were hoping. So we were extremely pleased about the two rulings of the court, the ruling of the court, and both rejected APNO. Now they're in a dilemma. Let me tell you what the dilemma is. The dilemma is that historically, you go to elections, and after the elections, APNO always complain about their defeat, claiming a couple of things. One, the list is always flawed. And two, oh, they were at a disadvantage using some reasons. In this case, it was the boundary. But I think they made a tactical error this time around. They went to court to resolve those two issues. So if they lose now, they can't now go and claim that the list is flawed because that has already been ruled on by the court. That excuse is gone. So I don't know what Norton will say when he faces this massive defeat that is coming. I don't know what he will use as the excuse. The excuse has been taken away from him already because of his tactical error. So he can't go to the others and claim in his party that, oh, the list was flawed, that's why we lost the elections. Because the other fringe elements who are, the other elements in the party who are vying for power against him will not accept that, although they themselves have been arguing that the list is flawed. But he can't. That has removed his excuse. And two, he can't go and claim that he was at disadvantage by the boundaries now, because that matter has been ventilated fully. So he is in a little spot now because he played his trump cards too early. He played his trump cards a little bit too early. So we're extremely happy that the courts have cleared the way for local government elections. We have always argued that APNO did not want local government elections. That's why they were using the list and the boundaries to try to block it. So the courts have ruled the elections are going to be held. We're urging people not to be misled by these flyers that come around that are part of the original plan. They have not changed one bit. The lies still persist. They go back into the past as though they're in areas that they control, like Georgetown, Linden, and New Amsterdam. They're still quarreling about the PPP. They're as though we were running these entities all along. And then they have people like, what's his name, Henry Jeffrey, saying that, oh, now he's woken up after spending 16 years as a minister in the PPP government. He suddenly realized that we have starved the city of funds. Well, if we didn't inject large sums of money into Georgetown, you couldn't have driven on a single road because the government has been fixing every road in the city. Every road in the city. City council has stopped fixing roads decades ago. It is every road, from rebuilding when Norton Street didn't have a road, was a dam. We put in a road there that people can drive on, all through Main Street and Robb Street and Regent Street and Lamaha Street. Every single road has been built by the government for decades. And yet we starve. Hundreds, literally tens of billions of dollars have been spent on roads for the residents in the city. Secondly, street lights, the city council does not pay the bill for street lights, although they're supposed to pay the bills. So often the limited amount of street lights they have, it has been carried by the central government. carried by the bill for those being carried by the central government. They ran up some hundreds of billions, not hundreds, tens of billions of dollars over the historical period in light bill at the GPL, and it's being carried. The traffic lights, it was the government that put in the traffic lights here. We removed the dump site. We paid from the city to take it out. We have spent large sums of money on drainage, cleaning drains in the city, putting in greater pumping capability, etc. And yet we starve. What we didn't do, we paid our taxes to the city council for government building, but we did not give them large sums of money because they themselves, through the COI that was established in the APNU period in 2018, found that the city council was unaccountable. Through their own commission of inquiry. And so a person like Henry Jeffrey after 16 years in government, sitting people who were all over the place around me. And he was typically one of those. Wasn't interested in a single black person at that time. If you send him to a community meeting, he would find some excuse to go elsewhere. So that was his great respect for ordinary people of every race, including ordinary Afro-Guyanese. Suddenly, he is is very concerned about their well-being. And so they roll all of these people out, the has-beens and the useless, and to make the case for the city council. They have done a terrible job, and we have invested large sums of money. If you look at Linden, it's the same thing. I don't want to go back over this because sometimes they get a little worked up because my press conferences are repetitive, because we have to do this. I've said this before. I need to do this so that people be reminded about what has happened, because we have an active campaign of misleading people. And as you see, it's done quietly through these flyers. So every forum that we participate in, we are going to make the case again, and we have to do it. That had it not been for central government interventions in many of the areas controlled by APNU, nothing would have happened. And that is why we are urging people to give us a chance in these areas and throw them out. Now there are a few other things that I wanted. The last press conference, I see a lot of people were concerned about it, but let me just make a few key things. I said at that time that we're the only party that dealt with this issue of campaign financing. So when we pointed this out, I know some of the naysayers and the others, the typical group out there, what I term the vocal fossils of our country, they were very upset with this. So the Demerara Waves carried a story. Jagdeo not opposed to biometrics at polling places and electronic voting. And then they said, I revived, in the same story, that I revived the use of biometrics and ID system at the polling places because of a relentless campaign by APNU on biometrics. Now, the Demerara Waves was being a bit generous to APNU. It had absolutely nothing to do with APNU, because what Vincent Alexander was campaigning for, the type of biometrics that he was campaigning for, would have not only been illegal, would have disenfranchised people, but also it was a backdoor way to get a revision of the list, and would have led us to a similar situation that obtained in 1997, where a case would have been filed in court again about the unconstitutional use of an ID card there and biometrics basically to vote. That is the campaign he was waging, surreptitiously, quietly, with a different motive. The reason I clarify this, because it came up again in the European Union report, and because APNU was attempting to distort our position by taking earlier statements of mine and then out of context they clip a little bit and say the PPP has changed its position. Listen to Jagdeo then and listen to him now. So I had to point out, one, that our position remained the same throughout. And secondly, it's very different than APNU on the use of biometrics. That the biometrics can be used to enhance identification and to bring greater security at the poll, but not to disenfranchise. And therefore, I repeated the common position that we've had over that period. So it was not because of any relentless campaign that APNU waged that I changed my position. My position has not changed. This is an unfair characterization in the story. Our position has never changed on these matters. Secondly, it had a story about support of campaign finance. We still support campaign finance laws, but wary of disclosure of donors. And I pointed out again that we're the only major party that has placed this in its manifesto, and that we intend to pursue campaign finance legislation. As clear as daylight, but I reveal to the public because we believe that people must know what will, the reasoning behind the legislation, because its final shape will be determined by that reasoning. And I pointed out two issues basically. Our firm commitment not to allow foreign money, particularly from the oil and gas sector, to influence elections here, and then the concern about what we know to be typical APNU behavior by disclosing people's names, Guyanese now, who have made donations, big and small. So the Moraro Wave story again went back to, made it look like some Nigel Hughes was the one who expressed concern about this, as though it had its origin in our legislation. We're a big party. That our promise to do campaign finance legislation because of Nigel Hughes. Nigel Hughes had nothing to do with that. Nigel Hughes cannot influence the People's Progressive Party. But again, giving credit, almost everything goes back. Oh, the PPP did this because of an unrelenting campaign from APNU. On campaign finance, they did it because Nigel Hughes spoke about it. Would never give credit to a party that has dealt frontally with the troublesome issues, the issues that are necessary. Not because of these, what they did. They're overly generous. It's this balancing act, giving APNU credit as though it mattered. It's just never dealt, APNU has never dealt with the issue of campaign finance reform. So if Nigel Hughes was so prominent in speaking about it, why didn't they put that in their manifesto too when they contested the 2020 general elections? So I have to point out these things because the last press conference I did here, sometimes And we need to make sure that people understand, because in this country, it's a repetition. Every week you will have a repetition. In spite of this, the Chief Justice throwing out APNU's attempt to say that the voters list is flawed, you will see them still repeating it. And the newspapers will on the social media, will never say that this has been publicly ventilated and disproved already, because they will somehow allow it to linger. And it's by allowing all of these things to linger in the atmosphere. APNU survives in that atmosphere. They survive in that kind of context because they can continue to spread rumors and mislead people. And our job is to remove the haze from this kind of environment, so that people can see clearly that they're just lying and they're making a bunch of excuses. So normally I don't want to spend much time on individuals, but I saw also GHK Lal, who was working with APNU, now firmly ensconced in the bosom of the Kaichor News, from what I gather, writing editorials and different pieces, etc., and on Demerara Waves. He continues to write extensively. And about, so the last one, you know, I enjoy it. I enjoy what, I hardly read because it's the same thing. Jagdeo is the bad monster. But he said, the last time I spoke, verbal gimmickries exposes his frights, his phoniness, and his fallacies. So it intrigued me a bit, and I thought maybe I should look at it. So what's the concern, I think, of this group of people? And I think he was responding largely to me saying that we will expose anyone who distorts what's happening here to the international community. I was talking mainly about these NGOs and others. So I think what is, and he said he's called me brother, so let me call him brother again. So brother, it is, he came back to the country, he's a transparency right advocate, and then ended up with a party that has the track record, racked up a track record of the biggest venality corruption, of large-scale corruption in the history of Guyana in just 5 short years. And he ended up in that tight circle, and because he was rewarded by being the chairman of the Gold Board, at which a number of things happened. You recall Trotman, we have a tape where Trotman was promising to some of his supporters to give them business from the ministry, and then the Gold Board rented some of their properties and stuff. All of this happened in the tenure of the GHK Lal as chairman of the Gold Board. So he lost the position after the government changed. So I can understand his bitterness. I can understand that. I can understand his fright, not mine, that the party that he is hoping will regain power, and therefore he will regain some relevance and maybe resume the activities, legal or illegal, that were done in that period. He sees their prospect on a daily basis being severely diminished, and their prospects of regaining power. So he is is very frightful of this. What are my frights? I think that we have a party that's growing in number. Contrast that with that party that's growing in numbers. We're changing the country. We're getting more people employed. We're getting more people educated. More people housed. More people are getting benefits. Country is moving forward. More and more people are joining the People's Progressive Party. So I don't think I'm frightful about much about our prospects of retaining power. So the thing is that the phoniness, what is phony basically, is all of these issues. So if he is very concerned about transparency, and if he's concerned about phoniness, he will look at all of these issues about the APNU claiming that the PPP was engaged in super salaries, then taking a 50 to 100% as soon as they got into office. You recall that. Was that deceit, phoniness? You would recall that they used to make my pension a big issue. That used to be the major campaign promise. But that Nagamutu's salary escalated as prime minister nearly close to mine, so that his pension would have been close to mine. And Granger gets all the benefits of a former president and much more than I get, he has received. The same benefits. Wasn't that phony and deceitful? Wasn't it deceitful that the land deals that they used to complain about, that all the long list from Jordan selling off lands without passing transport, etc. But in GHK's law and the others' world, those things don't exist because they're phony. They're the phony ones. Then if he had to do a proper analysis that the $600 million still missing from the Durban Park project, then I could have understood that if he was even handed in his criticism of the PPP, but he's not. Because he, like many others, they pretend to be the conscience of the country. They're the ones who are exposing deceit and gimmickry and phoniness, but they are at the epicenter of deceit and phoniness and corruption. And so we will continue to look at all of these issues. What he spoke about, the incestuous link between the PPP and the underworld, the incestuous link. Now, it was the APNU whose member of parliament got charged for terrorism and was carted off into the United States of America. A person who got charged, a member of parliament of APNU, who was taken before the courts in the United States and charged for attempting to destroy the John F. Kennedy Airport, blow it up. Member of APNU. It wasn't the PPP who were linked to the escapees and that wreaked havoc on the people of Buxton. It was APNU, a demonstrated link. Even UC Quayana had to escape when he pointed out that link between APNU and the PNC. It wasn't the PPP that was trying to steal elections. So on the face of it, all the conscience of the country and these people who moralize every week. For me, I don't moralize because I have a political party that stands behind me. I'm working to make sure my political party is it becomes more attractive to people based on our work and our outlook and our commitment to the people of this country. And I will have no apology to any of these people for exposing and fighting aggressively any attempt whatsoever, whether it's foreign or from local NGOs or from the opposition or from these fossils like GHK Lal. I'll have no apology for fighting them off as they try to mischaracterize where we're going. They would thrive on a situation if people live in the dark. If they live in the dark, because their rumor mongering thrives in those areas, they blossom in those areas, they bear fruit in the dark. They can't bear fruit in the light. And that is what is bothering APNU along with a time now, because they haven't been able to spread the rumors that they have with such potency. So that's why I said they take it abroad. So these are just some of the things that I wanted to talk about this week. Let me make it clear that the situation that took place on the highway, that the government has absolutely nothing to do with it. I saw APNU again blaming the government, the protests and the removal of people from the land, that the government of Guyana has absolutely nothing to do with that. And in fact, we'd have to find out what happened there. We're trying to look into the matter. We know it's done by a private individual, and the people at Foothill needs to know that we are examining it carefully, because we don't know if there is a warrant issued by the court to remove these people if it's private property, a warrant issued by the court, and if the police were involved, whether they were involved pursuant to the warrant. But we believe that given our approach to moving people, that the police would have to explain their own involvement in this matter, but not from the policy-making perspective. Nobody in the People's Progressive Party or the government of Guyana is aware of the situation in Foothill, Suzdike, and we are examining it carefully. But as with everything else, APNU, like vultures, they descend on every protest, every tragedy that our country has, and try to steer it in a direction that that will be anti-PPP. So that's all I'm going to say this week. Thank you. Yes, please.
Your party is making inroads, and what do you think is the likely violation? Can you tell me at this stage now which of those stones you're confident of winning? And secondly, with regards to 2020, shortly after the election, former AFC MP Honorable Rutherford had publicly stated that the AFC is not fit to run Guyana. He had immediately also announced his resignation from the party. Recently, you see that he's now a PR candidate for the PDP in Region 10. Considering a number of persons, former AFC, APNU members joining PDPC, what do you think this is doing for the people of Region 10? And do you feel confident that with Rutherford supporting PDPC, it will give you something with people into Region 10?
So my answer to the question last week remains the same. I told you that I'm not in the business of predicting beforehand. I know APNU, we won already, which is factual, that we won 291 constituencies because there are no contests there. That's factual. APNU has won one constituency because our candidate died, passed away, and I must give my condolences to his family and relatives in that area. It's in the Corriverton area. So the candidate passed away, and so APNU has a candidate there, and there is no possibility, I think I was advised, of replacing the candidate at this stage. So APNU will win that one constituency by virtue of the death of our candidate. So those are facts. We're campaigning hard in every area. I acknowledge that it's difficult in the APNU strongholds, but our campaign, which is being taken to every home in the area, is being well received by the residents of the community. Whether it would translate into votes or not, that's up to the residents. But I know for sure we're taking the campaign to every resident, and people are getting hold of our message, and the mood in those communities are very receptive to the PPP campaigning in those areas. And that's a huge advance from in the past and would serve us well at the national elections too. So what the job of the party is to campaign aggressively, vigorously. At the end of the day, it's the people who will decide whether they show up, whether they don't show up, whether they switch is a different matter. But I know that a number of prominent APNU activists who have been with that party for a very long time have come. I met with them. I meet them right here at Freedom House. They come to see me, and there are tens of people more than those that you see who have come out openly. But others have come here and they speak of several things. That their party, they don't recognize the PNC any longer. Two, that the 5 years they saw the true nature of the PNC in the 5 years they're in government. That they had no concern for anyone, ordinary people included, ordinary Afro-Guyanese. And three, that they don't have any vision or plan for the future. And they have seen people who have transitioned to PPP do extremely well too, all of these issues. And we have a large number of people who are switching, and it is okay to do that. And now more and more people are speaking openly about that, because the pushback against APNU calling people, there are all sorts of names about, snakes and stuff like that, because they cross to the PPP. I think the pushback from the public and from people themselves have dampened down those criticisms. So with Rutherford, yes, Rutherford was a former member of parliament of the AFC, and he is now a PR candidate in Linden for the PPP. And so with a policy of inclusion, many more will cross. You've seen other prominent people, Mr. Bakker, who was Harmon's personal assistant, and a dear friend of Harry Gill, I think. So he has crossed the floor. A number of other people have done so. Yes.
The president is currently in Brazil, and your government has spoken quite a lot about the synergies you're hoping to create or strengthen with Brazil.
I'm not hearing with the music system back there. Yes, sir.
So just a few questions. The first is on Brazil. The president is currently there, and your government.
So he returned.
So he was there for a very important summit, and I would like to know if you could speak a bit on some of the synergies you're U.S. Does that in any way color the foreign policy that they may wish to have with Brazil, and how do they, wish to strengthen that? And the second thing on the oil and gas front, the government has said that it will pursue strong or robust contract administration for its backlog and the audit department. But you're on the brink of a very important auction, which will require way more human resources. How are you building the armada that you need of people to take on the additional responsibilities? And are you perhaps looking at sort of an independent commission that will provide this kind of extra oversight?
Okay. So it was a very important meeting for Guyana, and our president represented us well at the meeting, and you've seen the results, some of the results of his discussion in the public domain. I was fortunate too, because President Ali put President Lula on the phone when they had the meeting, so I had a chance to talk to President Lula and Celso Amorim, who been a strong supporter of Guyana. He was the foreign minister, now he's close to President Lula. So we had exchanged pleasantries, and we're hoping that he will come soon, President Lula. He's indicated to Guyana. And we believe there's a lot of unfinished business that we discussed from the past about the further integration of the economies of the two countries, particularly northern Brazil and Guyana. So we're hoping that with Brazil's involvement, particularly at the federal level, because the state of Roraima fully supports efforts at integration, they see their future heavily linked to us, given proximity both for imports and exports from the northern state of Roraima, which is landlocked. That we've always had their support, but they need the federal government to support because it has deeper pockets. So we are hoping that we can complete that project, the vision we've had. We have briefed the Brazilians at the technical level about all the efforts we're making at the road already. You know that before the end of this year, we'd start paving the main road from the stadium all the way to the airport and widening it by 8 feet. That is on the East Bank Road. And simultaneously, we're pursuing a 4-lane road going to the airport at the back. It will depart from Diamond to Busby Dam, bypassing the Grove area. That bottleneck there is being done now, being awarded. So that will give us 6 lanes coming in from the highway and from the airport. Before the end of the year, we'd also start paving the road from Soesdijk into Linden, $200 million project. We're at the stage, I think, of securing contractors for that. Hopefully before the end of a couple of months, we'd be able to conclude the agreement on the bridge, a 4-lane bridge across the river in Linden. Then the bit from Linden to Mabura is being paved. We've already awarded all the bridges, all 45 structures between Linden to Lethem Highway, concrete bridges that can of international standard, the weight limit. The only one remaining is the Kurupukari River now to cross. So already we are starting to upgrade the link going there. The connection, we have to now think about Mabura to Lethem, and then to the Deepwater Harbor and the connection through Linden to probably Berbice. So all of that, we brought them up to date because When President Lula was there and I was president, we were pushing the IRSA projects. That's the integration of South America. And this was one key project for the integration of South America. So we will return to that, and hopefully we will get federal government help from Brazil to continue to complete this network, which will mean a lot for the export of our goods. This would help with the soybean project, with the corn project, with agricultural logistic chain, moving the limestone and fertilizer probably into northern Brazil, because there's a huge demand for it for their agriculture. A huge set of business there will happen. We're now looking also at the technical level, because we need some federal level agreement if we start producing seed. We are working with a group out of India that's already working in Brazil, but they do high quality seeds, hybrid seeds. And so they want to farm the seeds in Brazil to supply our local producers. This is corn and soya seeds, and with high yielding varieties, and then to re-export back into Brazil. Early, maybe 10, 15 years ago, we were trying at the federal level to have an agreement that will allow the free movement of seeds, because seed policy is a critical issue. And that is, you know, you have to, countries guard their supplies of seed really seriously, because it could destroy your agriculture if new varieties get in and contaminate crops and stuff. So we're hoping at the federal level that they move forward with this agreement that we've been pursuing a long time. That would help our agriculture tremendously. So there are lots of things. We're working, this also would need federal government help. They were very interested in the hydro. Since we terminated the arrangement with China Rail, because they wanted to change the basis on which the contract was awarded from a sale of energy to an EPC. And we wanted to buy power at a particular rate, not to have the headache of running the place and stuff like that. So they changed that. We had to annul the bid. We have now gotten at least 2 proposals from Brazil, for companies in Brazil, to do the hydro, and then some other companies out of the US. So soon you may see us going back out to another process. But the Brazilians are still very interested in this regard too. Embrapa has always helped with agriculture, so we are hoping President Lula would help. So there are lots of things that we have to work on at a bilateral level. And we know, given the history of President Lula, that they would be very supportive for all of this. It was in his tenure that we got that partial scope agreement into Mercosur, and we got CARICOM's approval, we got a quota to export our rice into Brazil and other things. So we are hoping to expand even the trading agreements with Mercosur. And I'm sure those would dominate the agenda at the bilateral level. In terms oil and gas too, on oil and gas, no. On oil and gas, Petrobras met with me in New York and said, Houston, when I went to that conference, the CERAWeek conference, and they said that they will not be participating in the auction, and because they're exploring, they have an aggressive program to explore just east of French Guyana in their territory, because they believe that the seismics are common running right across from Guyana, across Suriname, French Guyana into that part of Brazil, so that the success that Exxon has here may be replicated there. So they have their own program to aggressively do that. But President Ali raised that with President Lula, and there seems to be some favorable movement in this regard too. So because we believe Petrobras is a big player and we'd like them in our market too. We can benefit a lot from the training and expertise and everything else from Petrobras. So that is at the bilateral level. In terms of regional politics, now we know the sanctions, but Guyana has been an important member of the South American group, UNASUR. We hosted the meetings here. We work even before President Lula became president. I met with President Cardoso, who had an similar idea. President Cardoso and then Lula and then Dilma. And so President Lula put a lot of effort into rebuilding the South American UNASUR, basically, so to bring South American leaders together. It helped us enormously in Guyana because in the early days, people had a different view that somehow we didn't act as though we belonged to this continent, that we are more either pro-Brits or Americans, and we didn't have a Latin focus, a Southern focus. And we disprove all of that by having the conversations at these levels, participating the technical level, and then at the political level, meeting with the leaders. So we have become an important member of UNASUR. And I think President Ali wants to continue that. So it would have been not to attend a meeting that seeks to bring together UNASUR members when all of the members are attend there, not based on ideology, but based on an integration of our region and our people. It wasn't based on ideology or democracy or all of that. It was based on these issues. So I think that there was no choice but to participate. And so we still have to look at the situation. We, in a way, it would probably help us even with our case before the ICJ. We believe it's Venezuela is at the table. Then the collective weight of like-minded leaders could impress upon the Venezuelans that this is the preferred course of resolving this age-long controversy, and that they should actively participate in it and respect the results of it. And so it does help by being there, and maybe even to help others who may get a different view, because Venezuela has been aggressive in its advocacy, particularly among Latin states, where the language is the same, etc., that our presence there and the meeting with the leadership of those countries can allow people to have a more factual view of the history of the case and the justness of it from Ghana's perspective. And then on the oil and gas, yes. On the oil and gas, I appreciate what you're saying about the capacity. And that's why I said that although we are looking at capacity, it's been done in a manner where we've had to, in the initial stages, right now, it's heavily based on external consultants. So although we have recruited new staff, we have a number of new staff, and they're working and they're good technical people in GRA and the Ministry of Natural Resources, that we rely heavily on external consultants. That can't continue forever. And so I pointed out the last time that once the phase of framework building has been completed, and that's what we're doing now, framework legislation, agreements, etc., that the ministry, a commission or a ministry, that will depend on time. But when we decide to transition the ministry leading the efforts to a commission, I don't know, I can't give you a finite time at this stage, but building capacity within the agency that is responsible is a primary task for the government. And that is why we have been talking to people. We already have offers. We're starting to recruit people to send abroad to look at marketing of our oil. We have like ADNOC in UAE. The Indians have made some offers. They may even deploy people to assist us for a short period. We've been speaking with Africa, some in Ghana and other places, to even have people deployed to our agency to work with us over time. And a lot of this is coming from the developing world, the consultants and the people who will work with us. So you're right about it. Capacity building is important. And then not just capacity building, but also technical means and technological means of verifying that what Exxon and the others said are true, are important. And that's why the last meeting, I think I explained about the next phase of monitoring like flow of oil and on a daily basis, not just getting reports, but actually having your staff real-time seeing, watching instrumentation panel that sees the flow of oil and what's happening offshore would be crucial to us. All right, thank you. Yeah, go ahead. I think we've answered that question 100 times. So it's like the same question that comes in different forms. So if the contract says, the Starboard contract says, 0 corporate tax, and we have just decided to change that in a new PSA to 10%. If it's 0 corporate tax and the tax liability should have been $260 million, then it means they had a tax waiver there. And that was given to them by the 2016 agreement. So it's pursuant to the same PSA that they got the $260 million in tax waivers. So that is being fixed in the new agreement. But if you look at over time, that's what we're saying, that the model is slightly different. That's why we didn't go for a 30% corporate tax, because the model is that you get 50-50. It's a 50-50 model. That once you have cleared the cost of recover your costs, then both parties get 50-50. And then if you then charge corporate tax on their 50% shares, you end up getting probably about 75%. And then you charge a royalty on top of that too, a 10% royalty. So of 100% of revenue, you'd end up getting over 80%. The country will get over 80% of the money if you had to do all of these things. So 50, and this is after the cost recovery, because it goes back to the 50-50 model. So I hope you understand that. So that's why the model is slightly different. In another business, like gold business or something else, there is no 50-50% share after you pay off costs. So they pay corporate tax, but there is no sharing of the profit 50%, but 50-50 each. So the model is slightly different. That's one. So we don't see it as giving. We didn't take the money and give it to Exxon. That's part of the agreement. It is like every time you get a tax waiver, like many people have gotten tax waivers, oil and the other companies. And I hope by now you've seen all of the The contracts on the ministry for the large companies, they should be on finance website now, the gold companies, something that you've been pursuing for a long time. They're out in the public domain now, and you will see exactly what people got there. So we haven't given, the PPP hasn't given anything in this area. It's all based on the PSA. The second thing is that I'm not even sure about that. I saw some comments about, oh, people don't walk away easily from the investment. My concern has been about the killing of the momentum. And this is where we have a fundamental disagreement, not just with you and with Kaichor News, but with also, I see APNO has been bullied into giving their position. Kaichor News bullied them into making a position, but we'll see that. So they want to pace things out forever. Two things we've explained already. Net zero is already upon us. You have a fringe out here saying, stop producing oil. Guyanese fringe. Don't produce anything. We have the big countries, particularly those who are producing oil. They don't want new entrants in the market because they preserve their monopoly. And then you have a climate group saying, oh, Ghana should not touch it. So we will not be able to develop these resources. As the years pass by, it's getting even harder to do so. They're putting in Europe, they're looking at, the Biden administration just passed a new law that will place green technology in developing other parts of the world at a disadvantage. As part of this act to raise the debt ceiling in the US, I think last week, they had an issue, they would have gone unable to service its debt, the US, so they have a big discussion now about raising the debt ceiling. And guess what was one of the components? That they would allow oil and gas exploration in a part of the US that they had prevented. That was part of the agreement that President Biden and the Republicans and the Democrats agreed to just a week ago to increase exploration and to increase possibly production in the US a week ago. And then you heard in the same breath, Foreign Secretary, the Secretary of State, Blinken talking about net zero. But so we have to look out for our own here in this country. And it's this naive view that somehow, because they're not connected to the external pressures that APNO and many others have, that they don't realize that the people who explore for the oil now early enough and actually start the production, there's a tiny window. The moment Suriname and the others are having a hard time already moving to a stage where there's a commitment to even invest. Ghana still remains attractive. That's why the auction is out and we're pushing for the new FPSOs. Because there would be a time in the future you would not be able to raise money because of ESG and because of what shareholders are pushing for many of these companies to switch to renewable energy, that you may not be able to even do this. And so that is why it is this understanding of the dynamics of the industry, what's happening globally, etc., that are important to having a national position. It can't be just about a one-issue position, or it's not a one-variable solution. There are multiple variables that have to be all combined to get the ultimate. But right now, the key thing is getting the investment dollars to flow. 85 countries now are out with auctions, hoping to get oil and gas companies to go on and invest in those countries. 85 we are competing with, 85 countries. And they're busy trying to do it. And so what we're worried about, again, at the beginnings, in spite of all of what you just said, that it will kill the momentum. momentum is everything. And it is the momentum that we're worried about, and it's hard to pick up momentum back again. So Guyana still remains attractive. We're discovering, we have an aggressive program to discover more. We're doing this. And at the same time, increasing momentum doesn't mean we have to be lax on other things. Our environmental permits now are substantially stronger than they were 5 years ago. Our capacity to fight spills now is vastly enhanced because of what we've just agreed about that cap in stock. That would plug it immediately a well, and that would allow drift and all of this not to take place. So this is my position on it. It's a momentum that I'm worried about, not so much that what any negotiation will do. It will definitely kill off probably the movement on the other FPSOs that are planned. That's it. Yes. All right. No problem. No problem. So it's exposed. The expenses are now looked at, particularly for the Stabroek Block. I'm talking about Stabroek Block. It's exposed. So after they're made, then because we're not co-managing, we dealt with that issue already. So it's an exposed assessment. And there is no time limit for the exposed assessment to take place. Although the PSA says 2 years, we have dealt with that publicly, that there be no time limit to it. So that means even if we don't have the capacity today, and we build that capacity 3 years down the line, that because it's exposed and because there's no time limit for remedial action and for recovery for expenses that may have not gone towards under the PSA that don't fit the definition, you can recover those. So that's one. But we have to build capacity. And the capacity is that already we're in the audit. We can, if we wanted to move swiftly, we wouldn't have gone to local content. We just hire a couple of international firms, and then we'd have the capacity to do all the audits right up to the current date nearly. But we're taking a different approach to it. Another element, what? Absorb, yes. So absorb. The thing too is that the sector operates in an enclavic way. And this is why, because if that investment was taking place in this economy, like very integrated in the economy, 40 billion in an economy our size, which is about 10, 11 billion dollars, that would have triggered massive overheating, etc. But it operates in an enclavic way. So only elements of the flow come back to the country. So 400 million of local spending, 400 million of spending. A lot of that money is raised abroad and spent abroad. So it doesn't integrate. That is why it's not triggering the kind of overheating that you would expect from such a big investment. So we have to carefully manage that too. And on the Dutch disease side, already, if you look at the exchange rate has not appreciated. It has not appreciated, which is the biggest concern for countries, because it would kill the manufacturing and the agricultural sector. So we're mindful of that. The ability of the economy to absorb large expenditure in the country. The monitoring is a different matter. And as I just said, it's exposed. But what's the alternative? To sit and not develop it and wait for the future. Now, one valid point could be that, all right, you're allowing all these projects to come forward, and therefore, because there is no ring fencing, you're not getting the early flow of revenue, because you can quickly meet, saturation point if you're ring fence, and then immediately the 50-50 formula kicks in, rather than 12 and a half or 50% of just 25% of gross revenue. You're following me, right? So that's valid, and that's a judgment call. We believe that in the long run, having a 1.1 billion sector, that if you max out at $1.1 billion sector, so you'd have smaller sums coming in now. So don't believe, Norton, that we're getting large amounts of money, but smaller sums coming out now. And then suddenly in the outer years, by 2027, 2028, in that period, you see a steep ramp up into billions of US dollars flowing to Guyana. But by that time, you're firmly established in the market. So the sanctions that could inevitably come because of ESG and because of net zero and because of this push for the energy transition, that you would basically avoid those, like other countries who are pacing themselves or now looking to get investments. So that's the thinking. And I'm sharing with you in an honest way the thinking here, because often people don't know that. They have a different view, they have one position, and as I said before, this matter and the national position cannot be a straight line matter on one variable. So that's what I saw. The APNU press conference, I knew this was so, that they will come out this week with something that is not thought out. So APNU is a wishy-washy party. They're led by the nose by Kaichor News particularly. Let me say that. And this is, I'm really giving credit to Kaichor News now, because they're so incompetent. I saw this with Ramjatan and Trotman and the others. They don't want criticism, and they're not confident technically enough to argue or to take on Kaichor, and they want to remain good friends and get the good publicity. So what do? They're led by the nose. They see an editorial, they get criticized a bit, and then they suddenly come up with something to satisfy. So the economist, who's now economist, said, we're not going to listen to Kaichor News, they can't direct us. And then did exactly what Kaichor News was planning for them to do, read out a thing which is not thought out. They've locked themselves into a corner now, Norton, on their policy that they're going to have a hard time explaining in the future. They are just, this is when a party doesn't have its own capacity to think. It allows Glenn Lal, who himself is challenged in that regard, to lead them. I see Glenn Lal has been saying some nasty things about me, but I'll deal with him in a couple of days from now. And then when he comes to my press conference, I'm not dealing with the reporters today. Yes, please. All right. Yes. And let me go through the Kaichor News first. Yes, go through. Yeah. Yeah, so the different projects are run on different numbers. So it ranges between, for each of the FPSO, so it ranges between $25 to about $35 per barrel. Yeah, but it's not the lowest. Many other countries in the world have lower costs than ours. We're in the mid-range and towards the lower end. but lots of other countries. But our crude is a good quality crude compared to many others. It's like sweet crude. Yes. Yeah. I'm glad. I hope Norton would listen to you because it's largely meager, and at the time being it is. It is not a lot of money at this stage. And so it is managing what we get well and in a direction that will in the long run bear all the benefits and bring us to that world-class, first world stage that we want our people to live in. So investment in healthcare. So it's a combination of spending what we have and a judicious set of borrowing where we know based on future capacity we can repay. So that's why this year we're starting 12 new hospitals. That will make a big difference to healthcare. We're going to rehabilitate the Linden Hospital, the Bartica Hospital, West Dem, all of the others will be rehabilitated right across the country. So you would agree with me that healthcare is very important for people and all of our people, quality healthcare. That's why we're investing. We're investing a lot of the money in, soon you will have free University of Guyana education, which we promise, but we're investing a lot in scholarships. So already 14,000 scholarships have been awarded. People are studying in that regard. We're investing back in children. You heard what I just said at the beginning. Over 300,000 people have seen substantial increases in their disposable income since we got into office. The pensioners, the young kids, etc. That's where we're investing. We're investing in the long-term infrastructural project. The gas to energy will solve electricity problems. Cheaper electricity would allow the manufacturing sector to grow in the future and bring greater comfort to people. It would allow more light. Cheaper cost of living coming from the cooking gas. We're investing in farm-to-market roads to start new sectors, for example, corn and soya. I can go down the list. So it's a combination of the economy and the big infrastructure, the highways, the bridges, etc. A combination of putting in place the infrastructure for the future, the social services, the economic areas that would create wealth in the future, and then of course getting more comfort for people. That's where the investment is taking place. We can't do like what Norton just said. Distribute $5 million to everyone, and you don't even, all of the money we've received from the oil and gas companies so far since they started producing wouldn't be enough to pay 1 year allocation. We can't do that because it's nonsense, but it sounds attractive to people. He's hoping that they will be fooled once again. So these are all things. And by the way, on the gas to energy project, I was looking at it. So I see Kaicho News has an article saying gas to energy project nearing US $3 billion now. The number has jumped from 2 to 3. It's not true. That's a whole $1 billion more you're adding on to the project. $1 billion. Now, and they did a fancy arithmetic. I don't know, Glenn Lal probably did this calculation. So he calculated, he came up with pipeline 1.1 billion, NGL and power plant 1 billion, although the contract is $760 million. That's what the contract, he put $1 billion here. Okay, but this is ripping. But right now the cost of it is $760 million. That's what we awarded the contract. So that's cost. We're looking at cost. Then compensation for landowners, $2 million. And then they put $2.3 billion and counting. And then the headline says $3 billion. But it's not $2.3 billion. if you do mathematics, you usually look at points. The 2 million is not 0.2, it's 0.02. So when you add down, it should be about $2.12 billion, not $2.3 billion. They add it as 0.2. It is 0.02. Tell Glenn Lal that he needs to understand decimal places. That is school kids, that's primary school business, nursery school business. He needs to understand that decimal places count. Right? So not just the 3 billion misleading headline, by 1 billion, but also the calculations are wrong because he doesn't understand the decimal places thing. There was one APNU regional chairman, and he wrote a check and had 10 zeros to it. And apparently, when they asked him, he said zeros don't count. But the zeros after the number count, they do count. So Glenn Lal sounds like that. Right, that's 2, that's your 2. All right, let me move on. Yes, young lady. Who said that? Well, this is precisely what I said before. So this is abroad, right? He went abroad. He can't say that in Guyana because the facts are that 40-something thousand Haitian nationals came into the country or trafficked through Guyana under APNU. Trafficked through the country under APNU. That is a fact. They should have catched Darren Wade and all the people who were part of the trafficking and lock him up right abroad because for doing that, for trafficking people. We still need to find out who they are. And you remember Winston Felix saying, when asked about the numbers, he didn't know where the people are. He knew they came in the country. Imagine a minister responsible for immigration didn't know that the people left the country. They were trafficked through Guyana. So we made it clear, we're ending trafficking in persons. We're ending trafficking in persons. Because what would have happened is now a report would have come up by some NGO and spoke about trafficking in persons of Haitian, and then guess who they would have blamed? The PPP, because we're in office. So that happened. Then we discovered also on one instance that the same individual who was bringing in Haitian nationals was bringing in 260 Bangladeshis. And they had gotten permission to fly a plane from UAE through Lisbon directly to Guyana, all the requisite permission. And we discovered this by chance one evening. They were supposed to come this Saturday. But when we checked the individual who was bringing in the Haitians, the same individual. So we had to stop that too. The Bangladeshis were being trafficked through Guyana into Brazil. And so anybody who is being trafficked through this country, we're going to stop it. Any person. It wasn't out favoring any people, but APNU and the others lost a lot of income because I heard many of them in those 5 years were collecting $1,000 each for meeting the people airside, the Haitians, ripping them off, and then taking them, allowing them to come in to go through the border. So they made a lot of money in that period. We stopped trafficking in persons. And you know how the matter came to a fore when the Haitians were caught in a house. They took away their passports, everything else. So it has nothing to do, but this is the racism of the PNC. Oh, we're allowing Indians to come and not Haitians. That is a typical PNC, the typical PNC behavior. Yes, please. That's what I asked Nigel Darmlal to get me this, but he can't find the contract and we can't find the report. Maybe he will, because I asked him last night if he could get me the contract, since they were pressing this thing about us increasing rates, and that's not true. We don't plan to increase rates and taxes, but they're lying. And so I asked him, and he has not been able to find it in his ministry up to now. We know there was a public signing. So when I Googled it last night, I found there was a public signing with Vulcan for 330 million or something. That it has different numbers. One time it says 320, 325, 330. And then they had done a pilot for New Amsterdam too. But we can't find the details of it. And I can't tell you now, so that's what we will investigate, where the report is and whether the company was paid. It could be, I don't know if it's the same like the scale company, that they paid and they didn't receive any money, and they didn't receive the scale. Okay, anything else? Yes, go on. I come back to Kaichor now. Yes, sure. Please allow the president to report on the summit himself. I'm just giving you about general areas that we have a bilateral interest with, but have the president. Next thing, they say I'm talking all the time. Norton complains about that. He doesn't want me to talk anymore. He wants the president to talk.
No problem. And before I preface this question, I wish to say I'm by no means trying to tell you how to run your press conference. Okay. But you've said repeatedly at each press conference, APM is a wishy-washy party.
Yeah.
During conference, etc. Why then do you spend so much of your time speaking about APM or responding to what they have to say? Don't you think that time would have been better spent highlighting the very achievements of your party? And secondly,
Okay.
don't you think the record of your party speaks for itself, and that people would see the difference between the two parties?
So it's a very important question. I'm glad you answered it, because for many years we thought that should be the case in a country. If you work hard, you work in a conscientious way, you address people's concern, that they will see this and you don't need to do much more. But often you can have a counter narrative that is pushed by a group that has no basis in fact, because it's emotive, that can distort every single thing you do. And so in earlier governments, the PPP did that. We ignored the 400 persons, young Afro-Guyanese that they said we killed, because we said people will know that it's nonsense. We ignored the fact that about the land issue, because we said we're opening up places in Linden, in Block 22. People will see that. We're working for the country. But APNU ran a strong, quiet counter-offensive. And then we had the NGOs on the other hand, the conscience of the country. They distort everything we did. So we are resolved now in this new era not to allow that to ever happen again. Not to allow that. Whilst we work and we'll speak about our records, but we know they don't stand for themselves. People don't remember sometimes that APNU took away the $10,000 from the children. We'll speak about that, and we'll speak about what we're doing. So we'll speak about our records, but we'll robustly take on any attempt to disparage or distort the record of the PPP. Whether it comes from a political party, no matter how useless they are, whether it comes from an individual or NGO, no matter how hypocritical they are, we will take on what they say, because we recognize that in this world, people often need to be reminded of things. And so I acknowledge the uselessness that we talk about. Not that you suggested it, but I acknowledge it. They're useless, but they carry dangerous rhetoric all the time. They try to still divide our country by race. You just heard the young lady said that Darren Wade is globally trying to say that we're discriminating against the Haitians. The Haitians were trafficked. They didn't come to Ghana like, they were brought through, organized in organized fashion, trafficked through the country. And he's making a virtue out of that and a negative for the PPP. We should be given credit for blocking it, allowing our country to be used. And I just gave you another case with Bangladeshis. 260 of them who we did that too. On one aircraft, 260 were coming. And we blocked it because at the policy level, we didn't know this was being dealt with at the technical level. They got all the requisite permission. And the plane was scheduled. I called Ramesh Gere at the airport because I said this couldn't happen. Nobody knew about it. Robeson didn't know about it. How could it happen? He said, yes, the flight is scheduled to come from Lisbon, and the manifest shows 260 persons. This could happen right before your eyes, even when you're opposed to it, if you don't play a careful watch. But a careful watch. So that is why we're doing this. That's why in the normal scheme of things, a GHK Lal is nothing. A person who is a hypocrite, who is trying to defend his own interests and the perks that he got when APNU is doing it. But they distort things all the time. The TIGI wouldn't matter had they not been lying all the time about their track record. These NGOs wouldn't have, like some of them who are trying to stop oil and gas company here, wouldn't have mattered in the normal scheme of things. I wouldn't have even paid attention to the Balkans and the others because we know what they are. But you have to take them on because every day they're in the newspapers. They wouldn't allow the country and young people to breathe. And we have to take them off. My job is to dislodge the barnacles. Every week you got to pry at these barnacles over and over again before they catch hold and they destroy this country. And as General Secretary of a party, I have to do that. Yes, right. What is it? Okay, yes. Yeah. No, nothing came, and again, it fits into that trend about trying to go to the UN or writing Vice President Kamala Harris. They can't go to the people in South Georgetown and tell them what they're doing for them. When they go, they criticize the PPP, but they wouldn't even bring up those issues because people would laugh at them, but they write Kamala Harris or some others. That is why nothing came out of it, basically, because we are robustly defending it. And Minister Oneish, when speaking, spoke about the mechanism for addressing these concerns at the national level. I can understand if there is a failure or either there are institutions that are lacking to address discrimination. But we spent a long time building those institutions, changing the Constitution, creating the institution. You have the Racial Hostility Act, you have the Ombudsman, you have the Ethnic Relations Commission. You have to explore the national institutions first before you go there. But that's where nobody knows who Nigel Hughes is and his own record. No, but Nigel, I'm talking about the permanent, right? Nobody knows about who he is and his record here in Guyana, a record of division too. Nobody knows that about Darren Wade there. So they would take him seriously, lawyer Darren Wade. Nobody knows. But in Guyana, people don't take them seriously. Yeah, go on. Who is he? Ray Dagger? First time I'm hearing about a Ray Dagger. That was the one when Glenlal, somebody sent me something cussing a man in the vehicle when you're looking and somebody. Is that the thing where he's cussing? Glenlal was saying effing and all kinds of stuff to the man, words like that. Yes, because the man tell him to maybe move out to the road, man, let me pass there, and he cuss the man. Is that the march?
So Ray Dackers has been walking, marching, protesting, and now he's asking about the contract.
I didn't even know about this him. So, huh? I don't know. To tell you the truth, I don't know who he is. So I don't, huh? Huh? I know about Glenlal, say you walk in and somebody said he's driving in a vehicle, walking behind. Huh? Glenlal was part of the walk. So he was part of the drive, they told me. Glenlal was driving behind someone. So I thought it was Glenlal walk. You know, listen, Glenlal saw a man named, Rahul Gandhi walk across India. Now, Rahul Gandhi just get about 2 million people following him. So obviously he thought walking across Guyana might matter. I don't know who the guy is, but he probably brainwashed and misled by Glenlal. If that's the case, he must suffer a serious dose of Glenlalitis. Yeah, I don't know who he is. Yeah. All right, go on. Anyhow, all right, don't worry with him. I don't know who he is. Yeah.
And my final question, if you could this quest to basically change the face of this party and have more diversity, are you ensuring quality control? Are you ensuring that the new faces you have in there, black faces, all pictures, are people who really want to say, well, these people represent the ideology of your party, what you stand for?
So people have to understand clearly that you can do two things. When you seek to become a member, right into the membership of the party, you have to spend a number of months on a probation period working. People see you joining a group, working with them before you get full membership. But 95% of the Indo-Guyanese who support us are not members of the party. They're not members of the party, but you'd see them support. So you don't have to be a member. People like Edge Hill and a number of other people are not party members, they're civic members. So they don't have to come into the party. We have an arrangement that where if people are willing to work for the good of the country, they're willing to fight this racism and the ideology of racism and division. And they're positive about their lives, they will find a place in this umbrella that we call the PPP, the family that we call PPP. I'm now one for judging people based on past, because if you do that too much, once when they're with you, that they live up to what our ideals are. But then we never give people second chances. When I was in opposition, we had a ton of people who were deportees. A lot of them have criminal records who came to see us. And they spent their time in jail. And they came, and this was in opposition, when we were in opposition, and they worked the ground, and I see them making changes to their lives, starting families, doing small business, etc. They have a second chance at life. So when people come, and there are lots of people who are smart young people coming to us, a lot of people who are formerly APNU people. You have a lot of young professionals. You have people who may have had trouble with the law but want to change. If we're too judgmental, then you'll never broaden the base of the party. We're like a little bit like the church. We preach forgiveness and much too. Right, when people come to us, we forgive, and once you don't go against the 10 commandments, well, we have our own commandments, then it's free to be part of the family and the church. Yes, you. Yeah. Yeah, well, people are saying that is why people have to see for themselves what's happening. Now, as Simona Brooms, if you think about Simona Brooms and the wickedness that she did through those syndicates, and Vic should really go after this now, to point out that how ultimately a lot of the mining lands got into their hands or companies close to us. She has a sordid track record. Simona Brooms, I've seen some videos where our members of our family with guns beating up people in the mining camp, harassing them. We have all this history of it. Nothing happened to them in that period. She was the same person who I told you that her family members got scholarships. They were not Guyana scholars worth $30 million. This is the Simona Brooms. Who you think she could represent? They only descended on Foothill because they saw some issue there, like the Coretta McDonough. She knew that they had a meeting the day before with the union. They set up the meeting the morning to discuss the same issues at 9 a.m. The union then said, we can't make the 9 a.m. meeting, we'll come at 3 p.m. so that what will happen, they then went to the Ministry of Finance to protest and then went to the 3 a.m. meeting. So it would look like the government is only meeting with them because of the protests. It's a set of dishonest people. That's what we deal with. And boarding, I think they criminally instigate people all the time. So people have to judge for themselves. Simona Brooms is no leader. When she was there, what did she do for anybody apart from herself? You recall, even after they lost the elections, she was trying to bully people. So I don't know. I made it clear at Foothill, we had nothing to do with that. It was a private action that a person took. I heard there may be police there because I saw this matter just before I came up to the press conference. We'd investigate it fully. Yes. All right. You got Davina gave you the question there, man? Uh-huh. We've cleared up more issues than exclusive. I think Glenn Lal wants to come to the press conference, but you want to come to Freedom House, right? So guess what happened? Boy, Glenn must give you a big raise, huh? So he wants an exclusive so he could then come to it, right, Glenn Lal, and get a chance to make a speech with his nonsense and his unfounded views. So we might create a forum for Glenn Lal and a few others, like I don't want to call him any names now, but we'll create a forum for people like him. He, Critic, and a couple of others will be in that forum. And what's the guy who was circulating? What's the one who was circulating the flyer for APNU? The one, man, I saw this one, he disappeared from the country. I forgot his name. The three of them will be at that press conference. Dr. Matthews. Dr. Matthews. Right. Dr. Matthews and Glenn Lal we'll host the forum for. But you really tried. You really tried. We will continue answering the press conferences at press conferences, no dedicated. Thank you. Okay, I explained that already. EPA appeal, we support it. It's a technical body. Go on to the next one. Yes, the second question. Huh? That matter is live in the court now. I just don't want to deal with it as yet now, but I explained the last time about the position. So I did explain already. I think we're just belaboring the same thing. I wouldn't be able to say anything new that I said from the last time, which is EPA is dealing with that matter. Okay. No. Royalty, I think the GRA has made that clear, has it not? Has GRA now made that clear? Okay, I will look at it. I will look at it. If they have it as recoverable, then it's wrong. It's not recoverable. So but remember, financial statements follow a different format than agreement. So that's what I said the last time. So when you read the PSA and the agreement and the formula there, you have to understand there are some conventions that guide the preparation of your financials. So if the conventions require that, they'd have to show it that way. But look at the conventions. Talk to a trained accountant. No. It is not, as far as we are concerned, it's not recovered. But look at whether in the financials, based on the conventions, it's required to be.